Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to share with you a story titled A Gift of Chappal. In this session, we'll explore the significance of this gift and what it teaches us about generosity and culture. We'll also look at the deeper meaning behind this simple yet meaningful gesture. So, let's get started and discover the story together. Let's take a look at the contents of today's lesson. We'll start with the objectives to understand what we aim to achieve. Then, we'll explore some new words that will help us grasp the material better. We'll identify the key points to focus on the most important concepts. After that, there will be a summary to reinforce what we've learned. We'll also see some images that illustrate these ideas visually. To test your understanding, I'll pose some short questions, and for those curious about more, we'll look at further questions for deeper thinking. We'll finish by reviewing the answers to the textbook questions, linking everything back to the overall theme of the presentation. This structure is designed to make the learning process clear and engaging. Today, I want to share with you the main objectives of our lesson. First, we aim to help everyone understand the chapter thoroughly, so you can grasp the key ideas and details. Second, we hope to encourage a love for reading by engaging with stories that are both fun and meaningful. Third, we want to foster emotional connections, especially feelings of empathy and compassion towards animals, which is an important part of our overall theme. And finally, we hope to expand your vocabulary by introducing new words within the context of the story. All of these goals are designed to make learning both enjoyable and enriching, tying into our bigger picture of developing better understanding, empathy, and language skills. Let's take a closer look at some new words that will help us expand our vocabulary. First up is scrawny. This word describes someone or something that is very thin, often suggesting that they look a bit undernourished or weak. For example, you might say, "He has a long, scrawny neck," to emphasize how thin and bony it appears. Next, we have protested. This is a verb that means to express an objection or disagreement about something. For instance, if someone says something you believe is wrong, you might protest by saying, "I protest your decision," to show you disagree. Then there's dragged, which means to pull someone or something along with force or effort. Imagine dragging a heavy suitcase behind you. That's what the word describes. It often implies some difficulty or effort involved in moving the object. Moving on, lapping refers to the quick, repeated movement of the tongue when taking in liquid. Think of a cat drinking milk. Its tongue swiftly scoops up the liquid. Lastly, we have tumbler. A tumbler is a type of glass used for drinking. It's a straight-sided glass without a handle or stem, usually with a flat bottom. It's commonly used for water or cocktails and is quite versatile. Understanding these words not only helps us in expanding our vocabulary, but also connects to the broader theme of describing actions, appearances, and objects more vividly in our speech or writing. Let's talk about some key points from this part of the story. First, there is a family meeting involving Emridu, Ravi, Meena, and Rakumani. This gathering is important because it shows how the family members come together and share moments of connection. Next, we see the children's love for animals, which highlights their compassionate nature and curiosity about the world around them. It also ties into the overall theme of kindness and empathy. Another significant point is the impact of the elders in the house on the children. Their guidance and actions influence the younger ones, shaping their values and behavior. Then, we have the introduction of the Chappals, which might seem like a small detail but actually plays a big role in the story, as it becomes a symbol around which the lesson revolves. Finally, there's the brother-sister behavior, which reflects their relationship dynamics, sometimes playful, sometimes serious. All these points connect to the bigger picture, emphasizing family bonds, values, and the lessons learned through everyday interactions. In this final part of our story, Emridu visits Rakumani's house and notices a pair of slippers. These slippers are quite long and covered with dust, showing signs of being used regularly. If you look closely, you'll see marks of each toe on the front part of each slipper, which tells us how often they are worn. Next, Ravi pulls Emridu to the backyard, where they have hidden a tiny kitten. This part highlights the innocence and compassion of the children. Ravi has a tough time fetching milk for the kitten, showing how caring and determined they are. They also talk about how elders always advise us to be kind to animals, but sometimes, when kids try to do so, elders might scold them. This contrast emphasizes the theme of kindness versus discipline. Finally, they decide to name the kitten Mahendran, giving him a new identity and a sense of belonging. Overall, this slide reminds us of the importance of compassion and how small acts of kindness can create meaningful bonds. So, in this lesson, what will I learn? Well, first, I'll explore the idea of morality and how it influences our understanding of right and wrong. We'll also look at how children's minds are much simpler than those of grown-ups. This means that children tend to see the world in a more straightforward way, without the complicated layers of reasoning that adults might have. Recognizing this helps us understand why children sometimes react or think differently. Overall, this lesson will help us see how these simpler thinking patterns shape their moral development and how we can better support them as they grow. Now, let's take a moment to engage with what we've just learned. This slide is all about the quiz. It's a fun way to test your understanding of the story you just read, which was presented in the form of a comic. So, as you go through these questions, think about the key themes, characters, and events we discussed. The most important thing here is to connect what you've read to the questions. This helps reinforce your grasp of the material and makes the story more memorable. Remember, this isn't just about getting the right answer. It's about really understanding the story and how it relates to the overall message we're exploring. So, I encourage you to approach this quiz with curiosity, as a way to deepen your comprehension and reflect on the story's lessons. Whether you get all the answers right or not, the goal is to engage actively and solidify what you've learned. Let's take a closer look at the characters involved in our story. First, we have Emridu, a key figure who's often at the center of our discussions. Then there's Meena, with a significant role that influences the narrative's direction. Rakumani also appears as an important character, adding depth to the relationships we're exploring. Ravi is another vital character, whose actions impact the overall storyline. We also have MP Pune, whose presence introduces additional layers to the plot. Tappy, listed here as number 2, plays a specific role that we'll see unfold. The numbers next to some characters, like 4 and 6, indicate their connections or importance within the storyline, helping us understand how each character interacts within the larger context. Recognizing these characters and their relationships is crucial because they form the foundation of the story's themes and messages. Throughout our presentation, keep in mind how these characters' interactions drive the narrative forward and reflect the overarching ideas we're discussing. In this part of the story, Emridu visits Rakumani's house, and what she notices first are a pair of slippers. These aren't just any slippers. They are long, covered in dust, and have visible marks of every toe on the front. This detail hints at how often and long they've been used, giving us a glimpse into the daily life and perhaps the simplicity of the household. Then Ravi pulls Emridu toward the backyard, where they've hidden a small kitten. It's a secret, adding a sense of adventure and curiosity to the story. Ravi's effort to bring milk to the kitten shows the caring side of the children. Despite the difficulty, they're determined to help this tiny creature. The conversation between them touches on an important theme. Elders often advise us to be kind to animals. But, interestingly, even when they try to show kindness, sometimes the elders react strongly, maybe with scolding or shouting. This contrast highlights the complexities of practicing kindness in a world that isn't always understanding. Finally, they decide to name the kitten Mahendran, which signifies the beginning of their bond with this little creature and underscores the theme of compassion and care that runs throughout the story. This scene encapsulates the innocence, curiosity, and the lessons about kindness that are central to the overall message. Let's take a closer look at the images on this slide. Images are a powerful tool in any presentation because they can convey complex ideas quickly and effectively. When choosing images, it's important to select ones that are relevant and support the key points we're discussing. They should enhance understanding, not distract from it. Notice how a well-chosen image can evoke emotions or illustrate a concept that might be harder to explain with words alone. This connection helps to keep the audience engaged and makes the message more memorable. Throughout the overall presentation, images serve as visual anchors that reinforce our main themes and ideas. So, by integrating compelling visuals thoughtfully, we're not just presenting information, we're creating a more impactful and engaging experience for our audience. Now, let's go through some short questions to review what we've learned. First, what did Ravi say? Ravi mentioned that whenever they tried to be kind towards animals, people would scold them. This shows how sometimes kindness isn't appreciated by everyone. Next, why did Ravi have to drink milk? Well, it was because Potty suspected him of something, so she made him drink milk to check if he was hiding anything. Where was the milk poured? Ravi poured the milk into a coconut shell, which was quite an unusual container but fitting for the story. Now, who is Mahendran? Mahendran is actually the name of the kitten they found. It's important to remember that Mahendran is a small, adorable kitten. Who opened the door? Rukumani was the one who opened the door, and her actions helped move the story along. What did Emridu see? Emridu saw a pair of old slippers. These slippers were large, black, and quite dirty, with a mark of toes on them, which gives us a picture of their condition. What was in the backyard? There was a kitten in the backyard, which is likely Mahendran, the little kitten we just mentioned. And finally, why would Potty leave for Padumama's house? She would leave if she knew about Mahendran, the kitten, probably because she might not like animals or might be worried about the kitten. These questions help us recall key details and connect them to the overall story about kindness, curiosity, and caring for animals. Now, let's look at some interesting answers from the textbook questions. First, question 1 asks, what is the secret that Meena shares with Emridu in the backyard? The answer is that they had a kitten in the backyard. This little secret highlights how children often share special moments and small surprises with their friends. It also reminds us of the simple joys of discovering something adorable, like a tiny kitten. Moving on to question 2, how does Ravi get milk for the kitten? The answer is that he had to run because his potty, or grandmother, suspected him. This part of the story shows Ravi's quick thinking and determination. It also emphasizes how caring he is towards the kitten, even if it means sneaking around a bit. Overall, these answers connect to the larger theme of caring and sharing. They remind us that small acts of kindness, like helping a tiny kitten, are important and often involve a little bit of courage and cleverness. Now, let's move on to some further questions that deepen our understanding of the story. First, what is the secret that Meena shares with Emridu in the backyard? Well, it's quite a charming secret, a tiny kitten hidden inside a torn football filled with sand, concealed behind a thick bitterberry bush. This little secret is what Meena chooses to share with Emridu, adding a touch of mystery and innocence to their friendship. Next, how does Ravi manage to get milk for the kitten? Ravi goes to the kitchen and takes a glass of milk, pretending he's just hungry. When his grandmother notices, he quickly explains he's hungry and even drinks most of the milk to avoid suspicion. Then, when she asks for the tumbler, he cleverly says he'll wash it himself. To keep up the act, he pours the milk into a coconut shell, sneaks back to the kitchen to wash the tumbler, and returns it just in time, hiding his true intentions. Moving on, Ravi claims that the kitten's ancestors are quite extraordinary. He says a descendant of the Egyptian cat goddess was a stowaway on a Pallava ship. According to him, this descendant became the Mahabalipuram Rishi cat, and the kitten is a direct descendant of this legendary lineage. Now, we should consider whether we believe his story. Most of us might find his genealogy fantastical and unbelievable, as it sounds more like an imaginative tale than historical fact. Now, Ravi also talks a lot about MP Pune. This shows us that he has a rich imagination, as he weaves stories and details that seem to be more about impressing others than about real facts. It highlights how children often use their creativity to make stories more interesting, which is an important part of their learning and development. Finally, what was that noise that startled Emridu and frightened Mahendran? The sound was a creech, an unusual noise that caught everyone's attention. It turned out to be Lali's attempts at learning to play the violin. That's a humorous detail, showing how sometimes even small efforts can create unexpected surprises and stir up a bit of chaos in our daily lives. Now, let's look at some additional questions to deepen our understanding. First, the music master is creating beautiful music. The sentence that describes this is, "The music master's notes seem to float up and settle perfectly into the invisible tracks of the melody." This poetic image shows how seamlessly the music flows, almost as if it's dancing along invisible tracks in the air. It highlights the skill and harmony in his playing. Next, consider whether the beggar came to Rukumani's house for the first time. The answer is no. When the beggar arrived, Rukumani immediately asked Ravi to send him away. She mentioned that the beggar had been coming to their house daily during the past week. So this wasn't his first visit. He had been there regularly, and she felt it was time for him to find another place to ask for help. Finally, let's interpret the expression about Rukumani's mood. The text says, "A sharp V-shaped line had formed between her eyebrows." This is a common sign of a frown, which usually indicates anger or displeasure. So, from this detail, we can understand that Rukumani was feeling upset or annoyed at that moment. These questions help us explore the character's emotions and the atmosphere of the story more deeply, connecting our understanding to the overall theme of the passage. Let's take a closer look at some of the questions on page 28. Ravi makes an interesting comparison, likening Lali's violin playing to a train derailing from its melody. It's a vivid way to describe how her music struggles to stay on course, highlighting the challenges she faces. When the teacher played a few notes, you could see how Lali's attempt to follow along was somewhat shaky. Her violin looked helpless and unhappy in her hands, which shows her frustration and the difficulty she's experiencing. After the lesson, the music teacher asked Lali if she had seen his chapels, which might seem like a small detail, but actually points to the everyday life and simple concerns that weave into their world. Then, we see Mahendran trying to hide under a tray of chilies, accidentally tipping some over himself, a humorous moment that also illustrates how children often find themselves in amusing, unpredictable situations. Finally, the beggar's comment about the kind ladies of the household being very generous reminds us of the importance of kindness and community support. Because of their generosity, he's been able to sustain himself for a whole week, which underscores how acts of kindness can truly make a difference in someone's life. All these points connect to the overall theme of resilience, community, and the small, everyday moments that shape our experiences. Now, let's look at what makes Ritu conclude that the beggar has no money to buy chapels. When she saw the blistered feet of the beggar, it was a clear sign to her that he probably couldn't afford to buy slippers. The condition of his feet told her that he needed help. Next, I want to highlight what she suggests to show her concern. Ritu asks Ravi if he has any old slippers that they could give to the beggar. Her eyes fill with tears because she feels the unfairness of the situation. She realizes that the beggar needs something on his feet, and her response shows her compassion and willingness to help. This scene really emphasizes the importance of empathy and taking small actions to help those in need. It connects to the overall theme of kindness and awareness of others' struggles.